Bagel conversation?
Bagel conversation.
What's up, John? How you doing, man?
Doing great, Werther. How are you, bro?
So I definitely know who you are. You know, I've watched you in the competitive circuit for a while, but I figured you could introduce yourself and some of your accomplishments, and then we'll, talk about jiu-jitsu.
Heck yeah. What up? I'm John Combs. I'm a black belt. Been one for about 6 years now. I started training in Colorado, trained there for about 11 years, and then kind of took off, went on this little adventure through Florida for a little bit, and then back to Colorado for the pandemic for a few months, and then left for Texas, didn't work out there, and then got a job in Jersey, where I was there for 11 months, and then met my one of my current roommates, Keith Kokorian there, where I did some teaching with him. And then went to Detroit for a few months, then came to Florida, and now been chilling here.
And now you and Keith are here,
yes,
which I'm very grateful for because I get to train with you guys every once in a while.
Yes.
But yeah, how do you like Florida, man?
Loving it, loving it. The weather is probably the thing I appreciate the most. I'm real big. I follow Andrew Huberman in his podcast, and he talks a lot about the importance of looking at the rising and setting sun. And a lot of places that you can choose to live will have cloudy days, and obviously in Florida it's cloudy every day, but the sun finds a way through. So even though it's going to rain every day, you will see the sunrise and you will see the sunset. I've seen it every day since I've arrived.
So you're saying that's important just for absorbing vitamin D, or is it something else?
So, and that's something he talks about in his podcast, regular sunlight. So once the sun gets above the horizon, so there's like a tiny little difference in sunset and sunrise, where the sun's like a small angle in relationship to the horizon, and that sunshine is fundamentally different than the sun you get most of the day.
Interesting.
Yes, it's got to do with the shades of blues and yellows that the sunrise and the sunset has. It stimulates a nerve in our eye that connects to a part of our brain that sets our circadian rhythm. So our brains are expecting this, they're looking for this signal, and if they don't have this signal, things get messed up in our body. So by looking at the rising and setting sun every day, you're setting like basically a timestamp in your body, and if you do that for like a whole month and every day, you're hitting it every day, that can help regulate a lot of the rhythms in your body. And I've noticed I've been sleeping better. I wake up every morning without an alarm clock, usually between like 5 and 6. And then we usually get to bed before 10. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Well, I'm glad you like Florida. Yeah. I certainly like it. It's a great state. So tell me a little bit about your jiu-jitsu journey. You know, from start to finish, how did you get started, and what were the things that you did to make your game so proficient in the front headlock? That's kind of what you're known for, right? You have a ridiculous submission right from the front headlock. If you guys look him up on BJJ Heroes, you can see a breakdown of what submissions he's won with in a professional level, and I think 50% of them are either guillotines or arm-in guillotines, right?
Exactly.
So, so tell me a little bit about that. How did that become such a staple of your game, and how do you approach learning when it comes to jiu-jitsu?
Okay. I'll take a part there. We'll start with the guillotine one first. So I started grappling when I was 14 with high school wrestling. I entered a summer strength and conditioning, but honestly, probably 2005 right around this time, maybe a few weeks earlier, but that was about 17 years ago, I think. 31 now, started at 14. Yeah, 17 years. Did I do that math right?
Yeah.
31, okay. Whatever, a while. But yeah, started with the high school strength conditioning program, started being like 5'9", 119, so I was a skinny little twig. And
5'9" is quite tall for a 19er.
Yeah. So put on some size. It was a hard process. I wasn't really that naturally talented, and struggled a lot in the beginning. I was kind of the worst kid on my team for about the first half.
I can relate. I was too.
Yeah. So struggled through that. Made it through high school wrestling, qualified for state in California. And that kind of gave me a set of skills when I was wrestling, because I never did any takedowns. I would just wait for people to shoot on me. I'd hit a switch, and then I'd ride legs. So those were the things that I would do. Those were my skills. I had a good switch, and I'd ride legs. And both of those two sequences led to me developing a guillotine later on, largely because when you do a switch, you're like reaching behind for the leg and going there. And when you go for the guillotine, it's a really similar action that you're practicing. So my enjoyment of the switch and doing it often in wrestling fed into my later study of the guillotine. So after high school wrestling, went to Colorado, joined the club wrestling team there, and then found Easton Training Center, which is where I started dabbling in jiu-jitsu in 2010. And during my first few years of study, I'm a wrestler, so I would always try to grab people's legs and pull them in, leave my neck exposed, and I would get guillotined all the time.
Yeah.
So just all the time.
I wrestled as well, same thing, you know, and I think for a lot of wrestlers, like the guillotine is at first like the bane of your existence, and then it becomes a super powerful weapon for you afterwards.
Exactly. Yeah. Get comfortable with the front headlock. So in the beginning, it was me defending guillotines. A friend of mine, Tim Galuzzi, who's also a black belt under Amal like myself. He a great dude, still in Colorado. He's a lawyer, and but in the beginning, he would catch me in guillotines all the time, and I'd have to fight to get out of those. And after I'd say about 2 or 3 years of like struggling through white, I got my blue. Nothing special, you know. I'd get smashed. I didn't really have solid fundamentals, but I was tough, so I'd always keep going, coming back up, get submitted, go again, and. Then at about 2014 to 2015, so after about 4 years of jiu-jitsu, I started to just hit guillotines. And I really enjoyed the process of hitting them and finishing them, and like I kind of got a little addicted to them. So instead of like trying to take the back, get the do the standard stuff in jiu-jitsu, I just hunted for guillotines all day. And I had a few training partners that would also do things where they would stay super turtled up, and you wouldn't be able to get anything on them. So like, the only way I could open up an attack is with a guillotine. And so just, by a trial and error, it just was a technique that I really enjoyed and started to use a lot, and happened to get pretty dang good with it. Yeah. And that led to a few really good performances. In my Fight to Win Pro 1, I won with that arm and guillotine, and then submitted a few really tough black belts with that arm and guillotine. And as you said, I think I have 26, 27 finishes by guillotine.
25, 26, something like that. Yeah.
So been a real tool in my game, and I still use it to this day. I used it at the trials and. At EBI before that.
Yeah, you won 2019 ADCC West Coast.
With
trials,
a high elbow guillotine. Yeah, that was one of the few ones that I've ever done. But yeah, involved in like the turning of the thumb.
Yeah, so do you typically prefer the arm in guillotine over the arm out?
Usually, yes. Okay. Especially statistically speaking, yes. I usually do that. Largely because you're a little bit better connected to the body. It's harder for them to use that primary defensive hand. So those are the reasons I prefer it. But in that moment, I'd gotten my hand was really tight. I connected, and then I turned and propped my elbow
sometimes that happens is you finish something that typically you wouldn't do, but it just set in perfectly. The setup just set in perfectly, and you hit it. So, I totally get that. Well, as a wrestler, I love the front headlock position. You know, I'm excited to learn a little bit more from you today, and it's interesting because everybody that I've seen with a high-level guillotine, they teach it differently. Like, everyone kind of has their own methodology behind how they finish, which is cool. But I think it's a great submission. And you mentioned when you first started wrestling, you weren't the best at takedowns. You preferred the ground game. So I'm assuming a lot of times you would get taken down, you'd hit a switch and ride legs, and then get near fall points that way. And I'm assuming that's how you would win. But I've wrestled with you before, and your wrestling is good. So I'm assuming like in your training you continuously improved it.
Yeah. Well, especially in my time in Colorado, I thought that I wanted to be an MMA fighter. Like a lot of freaking high school kids do, and then you go ahead and get punched in the face a few times, and it's just not.
What? Jiu-Jitsu's
better. Jiu-Jitsu's better. It worked out well. So I actually wrestled with Elevation Fight Team. I was there in like 2013 when the team formed. Came out of like Grudge Training Center. Some beef happened there, and then Elevation Fight Team started, and they were like closely associated with Easton's, and so I would attend 2 of their practices a week, and I did pretty consistently from like 2013 until about 2019, actually, like fairly consistently training with these MMA fighters like Neil Magny, Drew Dober.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you do full MMA training or just like wrestling, grappling based training?
I did like 5 sparring sessions, and that was enough.
That was enough. I gotcha.
And if I wanted to commit more time to it, maybe, but just getting hit was just a horrible experience for me.
It sucks. Yeah. Did you learn any striking at least? Like, did you do bag work, or were you
very little? I jumped into sparring way too early. Like, if I wanted to do it, like if I were to like take what I know and go back 10 years, I would have probably done Thai boxing for about 1 year to 3 years before I would have even sparred once. Like, I would have wanted to master those fundamentals and then take it to the sparring room where...
Yeah, sparring once, especially if it's medium to hard sparring, is really rough if you have no striking.
It's a bad idea.
It's not good. You need at least a basic knowledge of all the punches and kicks, so that you can implement your jiu-jitsu. That being said, I'm sure for the people that do it, it makes their wrestling a lot better, and more realistic for what an actual fight is going to be like. Because in sport jiu-jitsu, like so much of your takedown setups is hand fighting, right? Whereas in MMA, it's very, very different. It's setting up off of your own strikes or slipping your opponent's strikes to do takedowns. So it's a very different way to set up, you know. So I think it is valuable to at least do a few times to kind of see the difference. But
yeah. So I trained with Leister Bowling with Elevation Fight Team. He was the coach till about 2016, and then Dave Zabriskie took over, who was a national champion at heavyweight for, I think it was Iowa State, right before Kale left to go to Penn State. So those two guys played a pretty heavy role in my wrestling development, and so I actually learned a lot more about like offensive wrestling later on in my jiu-jitsu career than I showed up in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that's interesting. You know, I was a very mediocre high school wrestler, but my wrestling got considerably better after I started doing jiu-jitsu, and a lot of that was, you know, I would always want to wrestle everybody, you know, and obviously there were people that were better at wrestling than me. There were former collegiate guys. My buddy Kyle Kozil, you know, I would roll with him a lot, and he would just take me down like every time. But I would get a little bit better each time, and he would show me things, you know. And it was through that my wrestling got to a level where I'm like, okay, I feel pretty good about my competence here and my ability to control the pace, you know. And that's something I talk about a lot is the better wrestler gets to determine not only where the match goes to a great degree, but also the pace of the match, right? So if you're a better wrestler than the other person, you know, they can't really push the pace on you. You know, you can determine what that is. And while you have the ability to pull guard or the option to pull guard or pass if you take them down, the other person does not. All they can do is pull guard. If they try to wrestle you, they're going to end up on the ground. So they don't have the ability to pass like you do. So I've always found having the better wrestling skill to be very, very important for, you know, who wins the match. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially modern no-gi, like, you know, the ADCCs, like if you can force somebody into pulling guard against you, you got a pretty strong advantage. Like, just had a match on Friday, and the guy had good judo, but I was just so heavy on his head. I mean, I didn't even shoot. Eventually, he pulled the closed guard on me. You know, if you have that heavy hand fight, you're going to force people to bottom. That's my main strategy is just, you know, use the threat of guillotine and heavy hand fight to force people to pull guard, then I pass.
Yeah, and then you've got a very, I would say like your passing game is not like pressure-based in a conventional sense, but in the way that you just constantly attack and outpace people. Yeah. And I've noticed you do that in matches where you have a guard puller who's very good in many cases, and you know they pull off a lot of attacks in the first few minutes, but you're always right back to the passing pressure, and you're making them react. Yeah. And so eventually, I've seen them like slowly start to get slower reaction time, you know, in their guard retention until you hit a pass and then you submit them afterwards, you know. So is that accurate to say? Is that a good overview of your passing strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the main is like side-to-side pressure. Like you want to, it's not just enough to use your physical weight to push into somebody to make them feel threatened. You want to provide a sense of anxiety, where by attacking on one side, they have to move their defenses over. And then after they've set those defenses, you move back to the other side. And that continual switching of their defenses from one side to another shrinks their health bar. And I'm trying to keep my health bar as large as possible.
Right, yeah. So that's a great point. You know, it's about, you know, any position where you're in which like their cardio is decreasing at a faster rate than yours is somewhere you want to stay, you know? Yeah. And, you know, kind of along those same lines, like if it's not to your advantage to move first, then don't, you know? So it's like if you're in a bad position and moving first is going to cause you to get submitted, then you don't move first, you know? But yeah, I like that jiu-jitsu is so tactical and strategic in that sense, you know, where you can't just come in and have a plan of what you want to do. You know, like you have a strategy and you have pre-programmed reactions on how to get to where you want to go. Yeah. But you know, when I roll, for instance, I'm not thinking about like what I'm doing next. Maybe like I'll have an overall strategic thought, but you know, my body just does what it's been programmed to do. Is it kind of the same for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed just a little bit recently. Like we were talking about those new instructionals I've been watching. I feel like they've kind of closed off some gaps in my ability to go A, B, C, D. And I guess where I would say my main philosophy, like what I'm trying to do is just force situations where I'm going to be able to have a clear expectation of what their counters are. And then from there's like a few fights that you're looking for. So a good example of that would be is if like you get a body lock, step over the leg, you're in half guard, you do a nice little pass, you control their head, you turn their legs, you're able to pass, but you only get a knee behind their tailbone. and you need to control the head. So in that point, there are two ways you can do it. You either go regular crossface or reverse crossface, and you've got to try and set your grip, and then from there it's a battle to go against their inside frame, and they're trying to find situations.
Yeah, so you're funneling people to positions where you have the most pathways to victory and the most knowledge of what their pathways out of the position are.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically all of jiu-jitsu, right? Is we're trying to increase the number of pathways to victory and the pathways out of bad positions, obviously, too. You know, you can't neglect your defense. But so do you do bad position drilling a lot, or?
Not as much. Like, I've only really been training for about 6-ish weeks. I'm really only just getting back to being healthy. I had a really bad injury in March that slowed me down for at least 2.5, 3 months. So I'm only just recently right now getting back into full-time training. And be a really good idea to be doing that, but recently it's just been drilling takedowns, getting more familiar with my other techniques I've been studying, like half guard, side control, mount.
Makes sense. So you're focusing on your offensive game right now?
Yeah, more technical a bit. Like if I knew that I was going to be in the ADCCs, I'd be training way different. I'm still extremely, like I'm doing a lot more now than I've ever done, but there would be a different strategy to what I'm doing day to day. If I knew for sure that I had this major event on the horizon, then I'd probably be increasing the amount of hard training that I'd be doing. But right now, I mean, I'm mainly focused on just getting my body healthy again, learning as much jiu-jitsu as I possibly can, and then trying to plan out the next 6 months to where I can, reasonably make some money doing what we're doing today, talking, doing seminars,
Absolutely.
and then also ranging my training and trips. So like, I just want to make sure I'm planning my future, healing my body, and learning jiu-jitsu. Those are the 3 things I'm focused on. And if the ADCC comes, that's great. If it does, absolutely, I would change what I'm doing.
Well, I hope you get the invite.
Well, at this point, there's a chance it could be an alternate position. Like I'm competing this week actually, so like in 6 days, Saturday, in LA, where I grew up. That's where I started wrestling. So I'm headed back there to see my folks, and PJ Barsh is in that division. So if I can have a great performance at this tournament, then I think that would be an excellent argument for Mo that, hey, this guy's back on top. He just got ranked in the top 10 again. He beat this really good guy. What do you think, Mo? Has he got? And then hopefully I'd be the one, because I do expect. I've heard they're going to have issues with some visas. So there probably will be a chance. Last year William was the alternate, and nobody dropped out. So we'll see what happens this year.
Yeah. Well, good luck. That's going to be a great match between you and PJ.
Yeah.
So
the opportunity.
So let's talk about training strategy a little bit. And you mentioned you were injured, and I think it's something that as a young guy you don't understand as much. Like I remember when I was 21, 22, like I would train twice a day, 3 hours a day, and I would do that 6 or 7 days a week, and I would be fine, fine.
Yeah.
My body is getting worn down over time, but now I've completely shifted that. I only do 1 to 2 really hard hour-long training sessions a week, where I roll for a long period of time, and then everything else I use either positional drilling or I just do technical work, to improve certain areas I feel I'm deficient in or certain areas that I want to work on. Have you shifted towards less consistent intensive training? So can you talk about that a little bit? Yeah,
well, a lot of that also has to do with if you turn the timetable back just to September of last year, I got a really nasty neck injury and TBI. It was real bad. It was back in Jersey right before I left for Detroit. I ate a nasty elbow when I was training in a really weak posture. And so it wrapped my head that way. And it was kind of cool because I didn't really feel the concussion so I just kept training. So I messed the guy up I was going with. I beat up the gym owner. I beat up the toughest black belt. I had a really good session. And then after I stopped, I thought I saw a crack in my vision. And then I took a picture. I walked back into the room. I tell my dude, something's not right. I don't feel right. And then I'm trying to look at my phone. I keep dropping my phone. I try to grab my phone, but I can't use these 3 fingers. So then I try trying to tie my shoes, and normally I'll tie a knot, and then these fingers will push the bunny ear through.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do that, so it took me 10 minutes to tie my shoes. And they tell Freddie, all right, let's get in the car, let's get out of here. And we get in the car, we start driving. I stopped being able to form words. So that really scared me. We went to the hospital, CT scan showed nothing, and but that took I'm still recovering from that neck injury. A lot of my main focus has been building.
So it wasn't an internal brain injury that was the problem?
Probably both.
It was both?
Yeah, I probably damaged a nerve in my neck. That's why my fingers weren't working. And then I probably did have a mild ischemic attack, which just means, you had a little bit of my brain died. Yeah. So it was really rough.
That's rough.
Yeah, the recovery from it really was difficult. But I have some good resources. A really good book, the Concussion Repair Manual, that you can get on Audible or you can read. And there's some really good strategies in there. Float tanks are great for it. Obviously, fish oils and turmeric. There are plenty of things that you can actively do to keep your brain in good and better working condition and heal.
And is that just for people that are injured or for anybody?
I mean, anybody can do it. But when you do get a TBI, like what I wish I had done instead of going to the emergency room is a hyperbaric oxygen tank. That probably would have been one of the best ways to just keep my brain cells from dying, is just hyperoxygenate the blood. And that's probably what I should have looked for, is just taking some fish oil, taking some turmeric, gotten a hyperbaric oxygen tank. And,
well, with hindsight, you can say that. But, you also want to make sure you don't have a brain bleed or anything like that where you need immediate surgical intervention. So it probably was the best move to go and get that CT, Well, I'm glad you're feeling better, man.
So that dramatically affected my training approach, because I could do technical work, but I just couldn't really train hard, man. And I wasn't really able to train hard until around Christmas time. And then, I ran into other things, like obviously the situation in Detroit didn't work out. I'm here. And so
like I said, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, same here. Me too. Very happy here. But January and February just weren't great months for me. I wasn't really that organized in what I was doing in anything. And I did come here for a trip, and I had a very successful competition. That was really fun. I beat like 3 tough black belts. That was great. But then in that process from like February until like mid-March, I departed, came here actually for a few weeks, and it was great. Like I was doing very well, healing and recovering. But then that was when I got injured. So like I had one hard event, almost recovered from it, another hard event, almost recovered from it, and then I got the really bad arm injury. So, if you look at the past year I've had, I really haven't had like more than maybe 2.5, 3 months of consistent training since last September to now. So that has changed a lot of what I've done on a daily basis in terms of my training. So it's been much more drilling focused and positional rounds. And when I do train, it's just typically way less intense than I have. Obviously, I have some hard rolls with Gino and Danny and a few of the guys that I live with. I still do go pretty dang hard, but my approach to training has definitely changed a lot, and I'm far more grateful to just have the opportunity to just engage in the art. So
makes sense. Yeah. So compared to the progress you feel you've made now versus before you changed to this new training strategy, what would you say? Like, have you made less progress, or is it actually about the same?
Oh, I think recently I've made a lot more progress. I've been really focused on maintaining really good routines. I actually have this guy, Sam Antonin, I think that's how you say his last name. I know it's like Samuli or something, but he's a mental performance coach. He reached out to me in March, and I've been having sessions with him. Cool. And I have this little thing called a habit share, and it's like you can put things in there, and then you can like click, I did it or I didn't do it. And it's really helped out my consistency in everything. Like I've made my bed every day for like 29 days in a row.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, consistency is very hard when you're trying to form a new habit, and I don't know if this rule is true, but supposedly they say it takes 3 weeks of consistently doing something every day for it to become a habit, and that can be a challenge. That can be a challenge.
Yeah.
Because motivation is fleeting. You're not gonna be motivated to do it all 21 of those days. So you have to have some other strategy on how to implement a habit. So. So you said you have a mental coach. So can you maybe tell us some of the things he's told you that have helped you?
I mean, we've been talking about trying to set up routines. Trying to probably the 2 things I think he's told me that I've applied in my life that are best is flashlights over hammers. In terms of when you're dealing with your own when you mess up and you messed up, not like beating yourself over the head like jiu-jitsu example, like shoot, I got caught by Gino in an arm triangle. God, it's so stupid. Why would you do that? You suck at jiu-jitsu. What is wrong with you? You got to get better. And it's like, okay, you can feel that. But how's that productive?
It's not a productive mindset.
It's not a productive mindset. Instead of like beating yourself down with a hammer, like take your flashlight out, look at that. I'm like, oh, okay, so I messed up my hand fight here. When this situation takes place again, I'm going to need to take my secondary defensive hand and move it to here because I can block that. So by understanding that with the flashlight, rather than just beating myself over the head feeling angry about it, you can make a productive gain off a traumatic experience rather than just letting that experience spiral and not gaining anything from it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's definitely been a change in my mindset and this happened over years, like in the very beginning when I started jiu-jitsu, like I saw getting submitted as like, oh, damn, suck, you know, like this is like, I can't believe I let that happen. Like, I'm going to come back harder, you know, instead of like you're saying, right, take the flashlight and realize, okay, what did you do wrong that led to you getting submitted, and what can you do in the future to not let that happen, you know? And that's so much better if you're wanting to actually improve, because now you're going to be like, okay, how can I fix my pathways to not end up in this position again? And you know, that's something you can put not just towards you not getting submitted, but also towards your offensive sequences or your progression in the hierarchy. You know, Danaher's 4 steps of jiu-jitsu, takedown, guard pass, pin, submission. Okay, if I move backwards in that hierarchy, that's catastrophic too. And I need to analyze why that happened, okay? If I'm in side control or north-south or whatever, and someone recovers their guard in on me, you know, that's just as bad as me getting taken down or swept, you know, or getting put in a dangerous submission. It's like I moved backwards in the hierarchy. How did I allow it to happen? How can I stop it in the future? So it's like if you apply it to every single instance in which you move backwards in the hierarchy, and instead of getting frustrated about it, you, like you said, flashlight mindset, then you're going to be so much better, you know? Exactly. So yeah, that's a great point, you know? And like, I think it's easy for people that are using jiu-jitsu as a means of self-improvement, you know, just generally, maybe they're not happy with who they are, to get really frustrated when a training session goes in a negative way, you know? And I used to do that. Like, I used to have a lot of self-hatred because I saw flaws in my character and flaws in, you know, basically just my standing in life. And so jiu-jitsu was like the one thing I was really committing a lot of my time in, and I was kind of getting good. And so it's like, well, when the training session goes badly, like it just crashes you. And eventually I learned to not do that, you know, but it's interesting. Like, you know, self-hatred can be very motivating, you know, in terms of like, okay, I hate these aspects of myself and I'm going to work on changing them. But if you have too much of it, it can also completely crash you, you know, so it's a balance. And I think eventually once you do start succeeding in the areas in which you want to improve yourself in, like that will start to go away and you'll just become a more confident person. But yeah, in the beginning, that was tough. And I think that mindset was not as good as it could have been. And I probably could have made much more progress in the beginning years of my jiu-jitsu had I not had it. So
absolutely. Yeah. There's this Jim Ron guy that I listen to some of. He's like a motivational speaker. And he talks about how self-esteem comes from your little, you have like this little observer in your brain. He's watching everything you do. And if you're going through the disciplines that you ought do, that you know you should be doing, you're going to feel a good sense of self-esteem from that little observer. But if you're not going through what you should be doing, and you know you're not doing what you should be doing, and you're messing around when you should be getting to work, it might feel good to do that. And obviously you need to take breaks and rest and recover and all that, but that little observer in your brain is notching down. He's taking note, and if you're not doing what you should be doing, that little observer is going to make you feel bad. Now, that observer also can get frustrated with like when you get submitted or something like that, and that can like flare up. But you just need to remember that one instance wasn't a true reflection of who you are. Like that was just one mistake that you want to learn from. You shine your flashlight on it, help you grow, so that your self-esteem doesn't come down. But I think most people, first off, they just don't know what the heck they're supposed to do. They have no idea what they're supposed to be doing. So that's a frustration in there of themselves. They don't know what they're supposed to do, and they feel bad because they know there's some stuff they should be doing. They don't know what it is. So there's this downward spiral. But if you can start from a place of actually understanding the disciplines, like you get up, you make your bed, you know, you brush your teeth, you go down, you read your book, you do, and you're actually going and participating in the disciplines, then you can feel self-confident in everything you do, and no matter the result, shouldn't impact how you feel about yourself, because you're doing everything you could. You did your best. There's nothing else you could have done. You executed the disciplines. You gave it an honest effort. Didn't go your way. Learn from it and move on.
That's a great point. Jordan Peterson would call it taking responsibility.
Yes,
you know?
exactly.
And taking responsibility means exactly what you're saying. You know, develop good habits. Habits that will be conducive to leading a meaningful life, you know, where you will achieve the degree of success that the highest degree of success that you possibly can in whatever area that you're working in, you know. And it's not just about work or not just about jiu-jitsu, but it's about other aspects of your life, you know. If you're not forming good relationship habits with the people around you, with your friends, family, spouses, you know, then I think, like you said, that self-esteem monster just starts, you know, being like, hey, what are you doing? You're messing up, you know? So it's not just about work. I think it's about everything. And I think in American culture, that's something we need to stress more. I think that's something we've definitely gone away from. You know, we had the self-esteem movement decades ago that started and I think was very negative because it told kids, you're number one no matter what, right? And it didn't set any expectations of behavior or habits for what you needed to do in order to really like deserve that high self-esteem. And I think the association they got from that was like, okay, you have this kid with really high self-esteem and he performs really well, right? Or she performs really well. But maybe the reason that kid has such high self-esteem is because they perform really well and not the other way around, right? They don't perform well because they have high self-esteem. It's the other way around. They have high self-esteem because they're a high performer and they have good habits, you know? So for kids especially, I think that's something we need to talk about and develop. It's like, look, you know, instead of trying to focus so much on a kid's self-esteem and how they feel about themselves, get them to the point where their habits are conducive to performing and doing well in life in general, right? And the self-esteem will come as a result of that.
You got to give them the tools to deserve the right to have the good self-esteem. Self-esteem doesn't happen unless you're executing the disciplines that you know you need to do. Then you feel it, but like you said, society kind of lied to us. And like, oh, you're good just the way you are. You should feel good about yourself.
That's horrible advice.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Like, I've been depressed most of my life. Like, I've actually been meditating too. I've done that for about 9 days straight as well. The Isha Kriya. I've been feeling far less depressed recently. And I think a big part of that is just like, I could show you my habit share, dude. I've made my bed 29 days in a row. Like, I've done a lot of these hard things consistently. I've done the McGill Big 3 13 days in a row. Which
that's awesome.
Yeah, which we should talk about that as well.
Talk about it. Absolutely.
So this guy, Squat University, have you ever heard of him?
I have tangentially.
I'm sure he exactly is so salty about the knees over toes guy. Oh, he is so salty about that dude because this squat, he's been doing his thing for like 3 or 4 years. He's really a genius. Does a lot of great stuff, but didn't quite have like the explosion that the knees over toes Ben did.
It's very random how that happens.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, usually involving Joe Rogan somehow, right? So I do a lot of the knees over toes guy stuff, but I do a lot of the Squat University guy stuff as well. And so he suggests doing this the McGill Big 3 daily. So it's from this super smart scientist guy who did research into spine health, and he found that there are these 3 exercises that you want to be doing daily to support your spine, and they're really simple. There's one where you lay flat on your back, and you just flex your toes in, and then you lightly bring your head off the floor, and then you breathe for 10 seconds, then relax 10 seconds. You do that for about 6 reps, then you switch to the other side, do 6 reps on there, and then you do a side plank, where you like plank up on your side. You want to make sure you have straight posture, 10 seconds on, 10 seconds rest, 10 seconds on. So about 2 minutes on that side, 2 minutes on the other side. And then the bird dog, which is one that I saw it and I didn't think it would be that great because I do a lot of foundation training and a lot of exercises to really focus on glute development. But I've been blown away by how much pain relief I've gotten from it. So you just like get to a not really referee's position because your hips are over your knees, not over your feet. Okay. So you get to like a box position and then you pick up a hand and an opposite foot and you just hold it. And you're just trying to keep that leg fully extended back, this arm fully extended up, and like the development along your back there, and like the outside edges of your glutes is ridiculous. Like, and so what I think it's doing is it's helping to reinforce and make stronger the structures in your spine that are designed to carry force. But our daily life leads to things getting designed that is not a good way for our spine to go. How we walk, kicking our legs forward, we're always hunched over. So we've created a structure where the forces are going to go through us that damage us. Whereas if we took the time to develop the proper structures through this McGill Big 3, then in that point, the force is actually going to travel through the appropriate structures. You're going to experience less pain. You're going to feel better. And I have noticed unbelievable pain relief from that. And I do a bunch of other stuff as well. But I think that McGill Big 3 has been an unbelievable tool for helping take care of my back pain.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy that's worked for you. So you feel like your posture is just naturally improved?
I've always focused a lot on my posture. I had a great chiropractor in Boulder who was a mentor of mine, Evan Katz. I saw him, twice a week for almost the whole time I was there, really. Yeah, we had a very good relationship, and I really appreciated the work he did with me. But if all you're focused on is just the structure of the spine, like if you just want to make sure the spine's in a good structure, there are some things that aren't happening there. Because it's not enough to just have a really well-shaped spine. The spine needs to move. The spine needs to breathe. It needs to get waste in and out. And so you can't just have the right posture. You also need to work the muscles around in that area as well. And so I've always been really big on posture, but I'd always get a lot of pain, like right back there, because Well, it all started when I actually had a irregular heartbeat for about a month. I couldn't really train. Yeah, it was horrible. This was in 2014, and then I saw my chiropractor, and he adjusted my T-spine. Instantly, it was gone.
Wow.
Yeah, my regular heart rate was gone. So from that point forward, I'm always really heavily focused on my posture. But you know, just because I'm staying in this position the whole day isn't enough. You can't just maintain good posture. There's also, you got to be able to move. You got to go around. You have to develop the right structures to take the force.
Interesting.
So just having great posture itself isn't enough. There are postural exercises you need to do, like the McGill Big Three. There are these like clamshell things that I do, like opening up the spine, just trying to heal and make sure the spine can move in every direction and can stay healthy. So
yeah, I'll definitely have to get on that, you know, because obviously when I lift, you know, I focus on the big compound movements, and it's so easy to forget about these other movements that are super important for your health and not just purely for building, you know, applicable strength, you know. So, yeah, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate all the advice, and you know, I really like your approach, you know, and I'm sorry that you had to get injured maybe to develop it, but you know, like overall, like mastery takes longevity, right? And you want to do the things in your training that's going to make you be able to train for decades, you know. So, John, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, bro. Look, good time, man. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Looking forward to this seminar. So thanks, guys, for watching. Make sure you share the video if you liked it. If you found this information useful, make sure you get it out to other people so that they can also watch it. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you're new. Click that notification bell as well so that way you guys get notified when we have new videos out there. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you next time.